I believe that one of the biggest things that holds us back is the judgment we feel from others and the judgment that we place on ourselves as well. I know this is the case for me, and I see it time and time again in the people that I work with as well. So, in this video, I want to talk to you about this topic around releasing judgment from others and from yourselves as well, because when we start to do this, we have amazing, liberating feelings in our lives and also our art making. So this episode, actually, I've been thinking about it a lot recently, about the decisions that I make, the decisions that I put forwards in what I want to say, what I want to create. And I remember a few years back, it was probably about 2 years ago, really being aware of the judgment and the decisions being driven by judgment. And a few years ago, I won't go into details because it's quite a personal story, but a few years ago, I had to have an operation. And a consequence of the operation meant I was given a decision to have reconstructive surgery. And it was a big decision to make because it was kind of correcting my body to put it back how it should be. And it meant then going through the ordeal of having another operation again. And so it really made me sit and think about, did I want to do this and why would I do it? And it was a really profound moment for me, because what I ended up thinking back then was, if I was living on a desert island and it was just me and there was nobody else in the world, would I feel inclined to go and chase down a surgeon to go and correct my body to put it back how it should be? No, I wouldn't care, would I? Well, this is how I felt. I wouldn't care. I literally would not care. I'd probably just accept me for who I am, accept my body, and just get on with it. And probably go and try and find some coconuts to eat. But in all seriousness, that when I thought of it in that way, it made me realize that if I had have gone through with that operation, that actually I would have been doing it to please other people, to fit in with other people, to um it, it just made me realize how much at times the decisions that we make are actually to fit in with other people or to please other people or to be accepted. And ever since that day, and I didn't decide to have the operation, I didn't go ahead with it. And now I notice it more and more in myself, but also in other people. And the decisions that we make are so driven by what other people think of us, the judgment that we're afraid of receiving, whether we realize it or not. You know, in that moment of me deciding whether to have the operation, it was only when I thought about myself being on a desert island, being alone, that I realized that, oh my gosh, if I did this, I'm doing it for other people. It's not for me. Um, and that was a massive realization. And I've noticed it throughout my whole life since. The decisions that I make and have to make are usually driven by what I feel people will think of me, even if I don't like to admit it. I like to believe that, oh, I don't care what anyone thinks, I'm going to do this. But deep down, sometimes there are decisions being made, and it is because of what people think, even if we don't feel like we care and we try and make ourselves believe that. We do a lot of the time. And I remember back to when I set up United Art Space, and I remember that I was a young mum. I got very, very young babies close together. And I had work and I was making bits of money here and there and doing all these odd jobs and, just trying to survive. And I remember my dream, though, was to set up United Art Space. And I remember back then, actually, with this dream, it didn't get started for a long time. And now I know when I look back, it was because I was scared of being judged, because I had this role as a mother and I had all this other work that I was juggling. And back then, I didn't actually even know how to set up United Art Space. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how I could help people. I just had this burning thing inside of me that wanted to do it. And that just didn't seem like enough to share with people, you know, and get and go, I just want to just take some time out now to just live this dream. And I was so scared of being judged from then maybe not being the good parent that I should be, because I've asked for help and someone to come and look after the children whilst I work on this crazy dream that no one really understands. It actually looks pathetic on paper, and so many people did feel that way towards my dream. It didn't make any sense to anyone. People were worried that I was just wasting time and flitting time away. There was so much judgment on me during those times. And for a long time, yeah, it did sway me. It did make me feel this enormous pressure. And I started to get derailed by other people's opinions. And it started to bring in the fear, and I started to make different decisions. And it was, again, all based on other people's judgment and other people's opinions. And I see it in so many situations through art making, especially. So I remember when I was at uni and I wanted to really explore the figure, and I was doing life drawing and things like that. And I remember my end show, there was a lot of nudes. And I remember being so terrified. My family coming and being judged, and what will they actually think of me? And since then, I've worked with people where I see people holding themselves back. They just don't realize it, holding themselves back in their art making because of this fear of judgment. I've had people join our community and our membership making artwork, and they say to me, I like this, but there's something else that I really am interested in. And then they start to make up the stories of why they can't make that artwork. But there's no market for that type of artwork, or I've been told that I should do this, or I've been told to do that. But you can see in them that that is really what they want to do. And there was one artist in particular, when she joined me, she was making lots and lots of different types of work. And what she really wanted to make, but she didn't realize it because she kept making excuses, was more social, political type art. She wanted to create artwork that was challenging some of the things that was really hurting her, but she shied away from it and she kept pushing it away, but then it kept creeping in. And I'll never forget it. It was a few years ago, and we had a conversation in the end. And I just said, I can see you have this passion for that type of work. And when we got under the surface of it, it was literally the fear holding her back, because she was scared. She was scared to make that type of work. She knew it was going to be controversial. She knew it was going to maybe upset some people and there might be a backlash. And she was terrified to do that. And then she found a way of doing it, and she did kind of like this secret art and created a new name. And and then she went for it, and she was making all this amazing, incredible art. It was all pouring out of her. But for years, she held it in. She just wouldn't release it. And I've seen it in so many different situations. I remember working with a lady who joined, and she wanted to create art using texture and nothing else. She said, that's all, collage and texture, that's all I'm interested in. And she loved it, and she had a real knack for it as well. You know, she had a real way of bringing all these pieces of paper together and all these nice textures and colors, and sometimes they looked like something, sometimes they didn't. And it was such a shame that in the end she gave up, because she I remember her saying to me, "I just don't feel like there's any depth in my work. There's no meaning. There's no there's no point to it. And I just feel, well, what is the point now?" And I'll never forget her reaching out to me, sharing this, because it broke my heart, because I could see yet again somebody losing sight of what they really wanted to do, again because of other people's opinions and other people's judgment. And what possibly happened in this situation would have been, she maybe went and read something, I don't know, about art having meaning, and we talk about the why a lot around here, and what's the purpose of your work, or those types of conversations can sometimes just go, well, I don't have any of this, so I'm not going to do this anymore. And this is why I'm so passionate about hosting the Your Art Matters event, because it's a time to really, really tune in to what you want, without the judgment of others and without the judgment of yourself as well. Because what happened in that situation, where what I just shared, is that this person looked around for evidence of what art should be and what type of art should be put out into the world, and her art didn't fit that. And then that made her feel like there wasn't a place for her anymore, and that her art has no depth, has no meaning. So it almost made her afraid then to put it out into the world, because she was, I think, then afraid that, what it's like when you start to believe that art should be this, art should be that. So if you put your art out into the world and it doesn't fit that mold, or it doesn't fit that description, this is what I see in people, then they start to think, gosh, what if somebody criticizes me now? What if someone turns around to me and says, well, that has no depth? What does that mean? Who's going to buy that? This is where your head, or some people's head, starts to go. They start to go, create this scenario, or these types of conversations that people might have when you share your work. Have you ever done this? I know I have. When I've put my work out into the world, before it's even gone out into the world, I'm sat there having all these imaginary conversations with people that say nasty things, and I'm there and they're saying it to me, and I'm playing these weird pictures in my head of, what's going to happen, before it's even got out into the world. And this is what can happen from judgment from others, and what you start to see and feel other people say. It can really start to fuel this belief then in your own artwork, and the decisions that you make, that is keeping you safe. It's holding you back because you don't want to be hurt by these people. You want to be accepted. So there was another story as well from, I don't want to mention any names because these are, stories that people have told me in confidence over the years, but there was another person who joined my community, and I remember this person was making art, and they just said, I really love making art. It is my life, but I just don't feel like I've got any joy anymore, and I'm not sure why. I just don't feel motivated. I don't feel inspired. And what I usually find when people have that lull is this great quote from Jeff Walker, I believe, is, when people lose their way, it's because they've lost their why. So I remember this all the time. And if I lose my way in my art making, or lose my way in any situation, if I don't know the answer, I go back to the why. Why is this important? Why do I want this? And in the art making process, when we go back to that, when we go back to the why and we question, that can then give us the fuel, and maybe it's a new direction. And this person in particular, when they came to me and just said, I just feel flat, and I don't, just things just don't feel right. We took them back to their why and got them excited about art again, and what they actually liked about art making and what makes you curious. What stops you in your tracks when you're out, if you go for a walk or when you're out and about, what stops you, what makes you go, oh wow, that's interesting. And just simply reconnecting helped this person realize that the art they was making just wasn't the art that they wanted to make. It didn't bring them any joy. And actually, the art they wanted to make, they were holding themselves back because they were scared that they were going to be judged. This is really common in the types of materials that people use sometimes too. So this person in particular wanted to return to stitch and embroidery, terrified of how they would be perceived, because in this world that they'd come from, art was fine art, and it's all about this and it's deep. And so that judgment and that opinions of others then fuels my art should be this way, otherwise it's going to be ridiculed or it won't be accepted. But actually, that's just one small pocket of people. I remember another person who really wanted to work with alcohol inks, and for a long, long time kept forcing themselves down the oil route because, again, it was this judgment. They believed that if they worked in oils, it was a preferred medium, that it would be seen as a higher material, higher class of art, that they would probably get more awards. And they kept forcing themselves down this path. And then actually, when they were really honest with themselves and removed that judgment from what others expected of them, they said, I just want to make artwork in inks, in alcohol inks. That's what I really want to do. But they were stopping themselves because of all this judgment, and because they also believed that there was so much alcohol ink work that, what's the point? All these things, again, judging. And so when this person released all that judgment and just made the alcohol inks and the work, and it was amazing because you could see the confidence coming through in the artwork and it was getting really exciting. They were lit up again and they were happy making. And I'll never forget them putting themselves forward for a competition, and won the prize with the alcohol inks. And I'll never forget that conversation, because they came to me and said, I just can't believe that I won an award and it was an artwork made with alcohol inks. And I convinced myself that I'd never win anything in that medium, because I convinced myself that it had to be oils. And so I've seen it time and time again with myself as well, all the time. Still now, I check in with the decisions that I'm making and really question myself. If I live on a desert island, I know that that's a bit of a hard place to put yourself sometimes, because it's just, never going to happen, hopefully. But it is trying to get into that mindset of thinking, if I took away all of this judgment and I was on a desert island without these people, without anyone judging me, is this the decision I would really make? Is this the art that I would really be making? Is this the decision that I would really make? And now I always question it. And I do this as well with when I'm creating new things as well. I'm always being careful of making sure that what I'm creating isn't just to fulfill other people's expectations. Is that I'm not doing this just because I feel that I should be doing it, and bringing myself back to my why and what I really connect with. Because this judgment from others can really, really sway you off the course of direction and really start to muddle decision making as well, when it's based on what other people think. And I've got to say, a lot of the time, like I said at the beginning, we don't actually realize that we're making our decisions based on pleasing other people. A lot of the time, we like to think that we're not doing that, but we are. Um, we are without realizing, because of the society we live in, because of the noise we're surrounded by. We are literally surrounded by opinions and messages everywhere showing us how we should be living our lives, the decisions that we should be making. And it's very easy to then put yourself into a pocket of perception where you think that that is what is accepted, that this is the type of art that I should be doing, this is the way it should be. And what is so liberating is remembering that there is a whole world, and you can just see your part of the world through your lens. And that isn't always the reality, that there's a whole other world that you can't see. And I share this because if you are making artwork that you feel that you should be making, or you're going down a route because maybe you just don't know, then it's okay, because there's other ways of doing things. There's rules, but you can break them. There's always different ways of showing up and making art and doing it and sharing it. And the world is so vast. And when you start to really tune in with what it is that you want to do, you will start to find those pockets of people that are so similar to you. Just like all the other people that I just described, they ended up changing their direction, changing their art making, and then opened up a whole world that they said they just didn't know existed, because they were stuck. They were stuck making art, making decisions based on other people's perception and judgment of them. So I don't have any big magic wand that I can wave to help you start making decisions. I wish that I had it, because it is tricky, and it's something that I can only describe as you have to stop yourself in the moment when you are making decisions and really ask yourself, am I making this decision based on trying to please others because of what others think? Or is this something that I really, really want? And it is difficult when we live in the world that we live in and we have all the demands on us as well. I find that now as a parent, that the decisions I'm making, yes, have to be thinking of others and how they impact others, because I have a responsibility. But there also has to be this other part of me making sure, well, are we choosing this life that's right for us, or are we doing this because of the system, because we're being guided towards this way of living because everyone else is living this life as well? Does that make sense? It's getting a bit deep now, but that's what I've been thinking a lot in the last week, as I've been making decisions about my children and their future. And also, because we're coming up to the Your Art Matters week, I get thinking about this a lot. This is why I get so fired up about this, in terms of the art that you're making and why you're making it, and really channeling yourself, connecting with yourself, and pouring that through in art. When we take away all the judgment and all the opinions of others and bring it and strip it right back to what it is, you exploring in a visual way, it's so simple and so lovely. And that's what I want to get us to next week when we start the event. I'm really, really excited to kick off the Europe Matters event next week. So I'll just run through really quickly what's happening next week. We've got a video each day, which will share. Some days are drop-in sessions, some days are inspirational talks like this, where I've got other people joining. There is a timetable on our event website. So when you sign up via the link, a website will be sent to you where you can get all the information and all the dates. And I'm going to email you all today as well with all the dates. And then we're going to do an art challenge each day. So we're all going to make art together, and it's going to be lots of fun. So I think the moral of today is to really just stop. When you're making decisions, just stop for a minute and ask yourself. Maybe for me, I always imagine being on a desert island and thinking, would this matter? Would I be making this decision? if it was only me in the world. And it's always a good check-in point towards making sure that I am making the decisions based on what I really, really want in life and not what I'm trying to do to please other people. Um, let me see. Let me check the comments. How are you all feeling? I'm I'm in a deep, meaningful state. Hello, Colin. It's lovely and sunny here. It was really cloudy this morning. It's overcast in Cornwall. Oh, I love this. Yes, years ago I dropped the word should and changed it to could. That's a good tip. There was someone else that said to me a few years ago that they have a but list, and the but list is, oh, let me just see if I can get this right now. What did they say? It was, if you keep saying to yourself, I can't do that, I can't do that. They said, create a but list instead. I can't do that, but I can learn, or I can't do that, but, and then come up with a solution. So yeah, that's just reminding me of that. Cordelia's with us. Hello, Cordelia. Um, yeah, lots of advice here. Drop the word should. Drop it. Drop it as soon as you hear it come out your mouth. Blub, blub, pop it back in. um, oh, I love this. Yeah, I've discovered that things evolve bit by bit. Things you don't even know about will arise, and you deal with it in the present. Yes, which is always now. I love this. I'm going to be talking about this next week, but this of evolution of being an artist and the way you learn more and more about yourself the more you make art, and it is an evolution and a discovery. Absolutely. Um, let me see. Oh, this is an interesting one from Rachel. Hi, Rachel. So I'm passionate about the kind of art I make and the why behind it, but I just don't feel it's up to standard. Again, it's the judgments placed on that you're maybe placed on yourself, but also what other people have maybe placed, and you've been exposed to that. Because, I mean, let's look at this from different angles. So one angle, Rachel, is that as an artist, I don't think we, and I'm speaking for myself and for, I know Sharon, my friend Sharon, when we make stuff, it's never at a standard that we want, because we're always growing. But when I look back now at the work that I made 3 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I'm like, "Ooh, I've definitely got better." And I know Sharon would speak to this as well, because she cringes now when she sees artwork from 3, 5 years ago. She cringes and thinks, "I can't believe I put that out into the world." But you do, because that's where you are. That's the artist you are. This is where we are right now. The work that I was putting out 6 years ago, that's where I was. That's, I couldn't change that then. I couldn't be any different. I couldn't have raised the standard anymore, because that's where I was. And one of the biggest pieces of advice I was given from my mentor is, done is better than perfect. If you wait for perfectionism before you put anything out into the world, you'll never get it out there. Because, as the comment before, we're always evolving. And I don't think, I mean, sometimes you might raise the bar and there's a standard that you've created for yourself and you think, right, this is the standard that I want to go for. And I don't think that's okay. It's okay to have a standard. Myself and Sharon, we're always striving to the next thing, and I've got this next plan and this, but I don't wait to get there before I start putting it out into the world. It's out there now, and it is what it is, and this is who I am, this is where I'm at, and it's going out. I was talking to a member about this on Friday, actually, Tracy, because she feels the same. She said, I just don't feel like my work is up to standard. And she's kind of hidden it all away, which is fine. I think it's okay to do that. Work on developing your work, and getting it to a place where you feel comfortable. But the danger of that is that you never feel comfortable. So that, you've got to be really careful that you're not waiting for a day that's never going to happen. It's never going to come, because in this moment right now, it might not feel the standard, but in a year's time, you're going to get closer and you're getting closer, but the bar keeps rising. So you never get there. Does that make sense? So that's one side. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that maybe the standard is there. This is something that I see in a lot of people, that that maybe it's this comparison thing. You may have seen other people and their work is at a different standard, or whatever that means, and you're thinking, that's where I want to be, but mine isn't there. But we might look at your work, Rachel, and see it and just be like, whoa, this is incredible. We're not comparing it to the people that you're comparing it to. We're seeing your work in isolation for what it is and going, wow, that's absolutely amazing. So again, it's all this judgment. We've got to be careful about the judgment that we're placing on ourselves and the judgment of others, and then be really careful that judgment that you're placing on yourself isn't derived from what you're seeing and these rules that you're creating for yourself. Does that make sense? So this is my view on it. I think if there's part of you that wants to kind of work on something before you put it out into the world, that's fine. There has to be a line in the sand where you go, right, okay, I'm done. I've done enough squirreling away now. Now is the time to start sharing this, because when we start sharing it, we'll learn more about the process. We'll learn more about, how to do this. We'll get feedback from people. And then there's always standards that we're striving for, and knowing that our work is where it is now, and it's going to keep evolving, and it's going to keep getting better and better and better and better and better. So I hope that helps. Hello, I've noticed that the essence of many successful artists is based on them pursuing their own ideas regardless. Yes, as a result, their style showed. Yes, absolutely. Yes, I agree. Absolutely agree. It comes from within. Your own ideas. There is no one in the world that can make art like you. So this is what makes you and everyone else stand out from the crowd, when you really make it in your own way and your own voice. Absolutely. So Rachel says here, I know mine has no depth and it's all about disco and having fun. So the thing is with this reminds me of the comment that I mentioned at the beginning, where someone said to me that my work is all about texture and nothing else. It's got no depth. Well, texture is a massive part of our lives. Texture is all around us. It's tactile. It makes us feel something. Your work about disco and having fun, that is really important. That's, it would relate to a lot of people. I know I relate to that. It doesn't have to have big, deep meaning. It doesn't have to change lives and be shocking. It really doesn't. Your work will speak to people. And I think that in itself, though, has depth, about having fun. There's so much depth around us having fun right now. We're seeing this. It's a massive trend in social media. People are reaching out for fun things right now because people are desperate for some humor and some escapism. So, yeah, I just think it goes back to that thing around the judgment again, and placing this terminology. just let it go. Let it go. And going back to the standard thing around feeling that your work isn't up to standard, again, looking back at my own work, if I'd have waited to get to standard, I still wouldn't be producing work right now because I'm still don't feel like my work is at a standard that I'm 100% happy with. Nowhere near. So yeah, I mean, yeah, just in so many ways. Um, but I always, so I have this bar that I'm heading towards. But if I hadn't done all this stuff despite all of that, then I wouldn't have impacted all the lives and made all the connections and gone on the most incredible journey if I'd have held myself back because I hadn't reached the standard. So you can always strive and you can look at your work if you don't feel that it's speaking in a way that you want it to speak, or you don't feel like it has depth in some way, or you don't feel, you can tweak those things as long as this is something that you want, not because of the judgment of others. This is where it's really important. If this is something you personally want to strive towards and you think, yeah, this is something I want to hone in my skill on this area, something I really want to do, then brilliant, go for it. But don't let it stop you now. Um, Let me just see before we wrap up. Um, Hey Pamela, I'm doing this. I'm making beautiful seascapes, which I enjoy, but I'm worried about my real work. Not sure if that's what people want or if I could sell it. However, I've taken up the challenge and I'm doing a show in July and I'm terrified of doing it anyway. Brilliant, do it anyway. This is another thing, the judgment. I'm worried that people won't buy it. I'm worried that people won't have a voice. But it has to be, this passionate art. That's what sells. The passion is what sells. It really does. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not just with art. Some people don't follow their hearts. Yeah. In all ways, where we live, where we go on holiday, things like that can be judged. Yeah. So this is a great example from Anne. So yeah, I visited Castle Arts and they were talking about oils and the traditional media. And this is again the judgment. So this is their opinion. And it's I'm not belittling them, it's a very small opinion in terms of this is just one person in one place in a whole world of billions. And for some people, that is important. For some people, photography is important. To some people, abstract is important. They don't want to see anything realistic. To some people, photorealism is important. This is it. This is why art is so amazing and beautiful and why we have to just find what it is that we enjoy, because there's a place for it all. There really is. And that place, yeah, they're not interested in anything else. That's who their customers probably value oils. They only want to buy oils, and that's great for them. And so, yes, it doesn't mean, and this is where you've got to be careful, because that judgment, and this is what can happen to people, is they could go to a gallery like that and hear the oils, and then they come home and then they try and change their medium, or they try and change their artwork because of this feedback, and they start to place judgment on themselves then, going, well, my art, I did this exactly the same thing at art school. I felt like my artwork was inferior because of the materials that I was using, and I felt that I actually felt like it was laughed at a little bit at art school. And but then when you go out into the world and you go and start to see other places that are selling art and art fairs and all the different types of mediums and how much they're selling for, you realize there's a place for everyone. Yeah. Oh, Helen, this is so lovely. Yeah, I needed to hear this today. I was starting to feel like, what is the point? Feelings can creep in gradually and can be, yeah, full stories. Absolutely. And this is why it's so important to have supportive groups like this. It really, really is. This is why I created all of this, because you're so right. Because it's so easy to get derailed. We know all this. If you've been tuned in, listening to me, we know all this, but we still get derailed. Yeah, and especially if you're surrounded by people that are fueling this judgment on you as well, and the opinions, it can be harder to make those decisions based on truly what it is that you want. It can start to give you feelings of being selfish. That's how I felt years ago when I was setting up United Art Space. I felt selfish. I felt like I was going to be judged for being selfish. And there was a lot of judgment, a lot of criticism, especially when things weren't working. And it was tough to stay true, to stay in my own lane during those times. It really was. And you do start to then think, what is the point, Helen? And then when you start to think, what's the point? It's going back to that why. Because the why, and why you're doing what you're doing, and why you're here, and why you exist, keeps you going. I'm just laughing at all the conversation about going to the naughty corner if you're late. If anyone missed the beginning, you can listen to the beginning on a podcast, so it comes out on the podcast later in the week, or you can just literally play this back straight away. Yes, Simone, it is. It's so courageous at the same time as well. It's liberating, and it's a really courageous thing to do. David. Oh, hey, Rhonda. Yeah, that internalization, having the arguments. Yeah. It's not just you. No. Oh, I have loads of arguments in my head. I try and stop them now before they get out of control. So let me just, I've gone over today. So let me just read this last one. So Gail says, I don't understand why people rave about my work but never buy it, but would buy from other people who are not as good. How can I get over or through this? So I think with this, this is probably a whole other podcast episode, Gail, but let me try and just sum up really, really quickly. There could be a few things happening here. One of them could be that, so this judgment that you're having, so you say here that people are raving about your work, but then they're buying it from other people. But do you know this? Like, so this is what we have to put into a rational observation here, because this is a great example, and I do this all the time, of how we can see it happen a couple of times, and then we build it up into, people are raving about my work, but then they're buying it from everywhere else, as if there's like, this is happening like a million times. So one of the things, Gail, could be that you've seen this happen. Like, how many people have you seen buy like your work and then literally go off and buy it from somewhere else? Because I say this because it could be fueling this image now you have in your head of this being a bigger issue than it is. So that's one thing I would say, because if it's only happened a couple of times, then there's so much you can do. It happens to all of us, where people rave about my work and they never buy it. They'll go and buy from someone else. That's just life. It just happens. The other thing, Gail, it could be, is that sometimes, and I don't know your work, sometimes people have work that's really kind of accessible. So your work might be interesting to people, but they don't see a place for it. They don't maybe see where it would fit on the wall. Some people's artwork doesn't translate automatically onto a wall. It's maybe for other purposes, and maybe they can't see that. The other thing as well is how much work you're doing to actually make the sale, to actually say the work is for sale. There's lots of things that you can do on social media and just in general to actually push your work out there and say, hey, this is for sale, and talk about the why and the purpose and showing it like this is what it looks like. All of that type of stuff really helps people go, oh, wow, yeah, I'd like that. So it could be that you're not doing that. So if this is a great example, if sometimes I've seen artists, and I'm not saying you do this, Gail, I'm just talking generally now, put their artwork out there, and they just keep putting their artwork out there, and yeah, there's people will just keep liking because there's no call to action. There's no sometimes people don't even put the works for sale. They don't even say where to go and look for it. They don't show it as a finished piece. Where can I buy it? So people just click and like. So sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's that we have to spell it out and say, if you're interested, here it is. You can go here to buy. So yeah, it could be many things, Gail. But in terms of releasing that judgment, I would just know that there's a solution. Whenever I get stuck and things aren't landing or things aren't working, I just go back and I question, like, why? What can I do differently? And it is tough sometimes. You've got to roll your sleeves up sometimes and figure it out and keep going when you just want to just put your feet up and watch TV. But I think just knowing that realizing as well that you only need the next one person. Whenever I feel that something has escalated like this, I just think I only need one person to connect with my work this week, and you're getting the ball rolling. Sometimes we think we need hundreds and thousands, but we don't. We just need one. That one next connection can change everything. Sorry, I'm going to stop. Right, okay, I'm going to stop talking. Oh, lots of you saying thank you. That's okay. I'm gonna come back to the comments and check. So next week, yay! Next week, a week today, we're going to be starting the Your Art Matters week. So we're going to have lots of conversation around getting you to really be connected with your artwork, connect with other people that are taking part. We're going to have a fun week together, and by the end of it, help you to start feeling really good about art making and connected and excited about making. So have a wonderful, wonderful week, everybody, and I'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.